going to take off my glasses because I know there's always a glare with those. And I will turn off my fan and see if this is broadcasting live. Let us see. Oh, I think we're working. Okay, I'm going to mute myself over here. Yay. Okay. All right, Dave Head is here. Dave, you're first in the gate. We've got some interesting topics to talk about tonight. And I'm just going to make sure that we are also recording on YouTube. I'm going to fix my mic. Darren is here. All right. Hello, Darren. Howdy, howdy. And who else is here? Carl Bird. Hey, Carl from Opimian. All right. I'm just checking YouTube to see if we're streaming there. Live now. All right, cool. Love when the technology works. That's always a good thing. Hello to you too, Darren. All right, guys. As you know, I love to know where you're logging in from. So in the chat, please tell me what city, state, province, country are you logging in from, and what's in your glass. I'd love to know. That's how we get the conversation going. What was the weather like where you are? Today it was less cold than yesterday, so it was bitter. I guess it's just the comparison, right? Where you're used to fallish temperatures and all of a sudden it dips to minus 14. So it went up back to minus 7 today, so it felt like, okay, that's a little bit more manageable. What pairs with dental freezing? Love it, Dave. What pairs with dental freezing? Probably a zesty white. I don't know. Does anybody else have suggestions for Dave? All right, so let me get into some of my notes. And by the way, folks, if you're watching this on the replay, which I know a number of you do, please still comment in the comment section because I jump back in there and respond to your comments throughout the week and beyond. And of course, let me know, guys, who are those of you who are here live now, if you lose sound on me at any point as I switch to different slides. So please take a moment to share this video with your friends and family and followers and let them know why they might like to join us or watch the replay. So here I am switching to this slide. Hopefully you are still hearing me. Just click on that share button. And as I said, let them know why they might like to join this chat. We've got some really interesting topics tonight. And of course, if you want to take your food and wine pairing to the next level, as they say, join me on a free online wine video class at nataliemclean.com/class. Okay, let me stay in touch with you on Facebook here. Who else is here? Dave. Who's replying to Dave? George Lemoyne, all of them. All the wines. Okay, all the wines pair with dental freezing. Got it. All right, who else is here? I know some of you are logging in. I can see. Just let me know. City, province, state, country. What's the weather like? What's in your glass? I'd love to know. So Dave, Carl, George, what is in your glass? Elaine has joined us from Calgary. I know Carl's in Montreal, unless you've moved, Carl. Darren and Dave are in Ontario. George, where are you from? I'm starting to remember where you all are from. Okay, so this is all good and the tech's working. I hate to even say that out loud because I think, oh, it's gonna go. Let me turn to my Facebook topics. All right, so we have some great topics tonight. Why has the Drops of God manga series, and I'm going to explain what that is if you don't know, spiked wine sales in North America? It's just gone crazy, this manga series, otherwise known as anime, and I'm going to tell you the difference, but it's really caused a ripple in the wine industry. Number 2, are blended wines better or worse? Or on par with single grape or varietal or single vineyard wines? And finally, I switched out my third topic here because I just found it more timely to talk about wine scores. So, to whet your appetite, especially those of you who might be here in Ontario, the wine submission got a 96 points score or rating from the Toronto store, priced at less than 20 bucks. Did anyone taste it? I'll share with you what my score was at the end. All right, so let's dig into this, starting with Manga, but let me come back and acknowledge, oh, I'm going to try to pronounce your name correctly. Zhejiang Si from Beijing. Zhejiang, are you familiar with the Drops of Manga, the wine, and especially the wine series? I would love to know. So glad to have you with us. So I'm going to dive into that first. And anyone who's seen or heard about this series, please let me know in the comments. Gary Horner, hello. How are you? What's in your glass? Please let me know. Okay, so let me also give you something more interesting to look at than my talking head. And hopefully do let me know in the comments if at any time the volume goes off during these slides, but I think we've got that now. So I'm going to share with you, let's see, there's beautiful food pictures. What else do we have? We have lots of chocolate going on. What else can we share with you? Some vineyard pictures. Let's see what these look like. Yeah, those are pretty. Okay, so let me keep talking about the Drops of Manga. Zhejiang. Oh, no, you haven't heard about that. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Please give me a phonetic pronunciation. And tell me, which wines do you love? And Bedard is here from Panama, back from 6 months in France and Switzerland and Spain. And tell us about Annie, tell us about your travels. I'm so glad to have you back. All right, I'm going to dive into this first topic. So, let's get back to my notes here. So, The Drops of God is the title of a series of 44 Japanese manga or graphic novels. Some people think of them as comics. I think there's a difference between comics and graphic novels. And their counterpart is anime. So that's when it is turned into TV or movies. Visually, they're very similar. I wish I could describe it, but I'm not sure I have the words. If someone here knows how to describe the visual aesthetic of manga and anime, I'd appreciate it. To me, it looks like they're very visually rounded graphics of people with beautiful big eyes, but definitely, for lack of a better word, like cartoons and comics, but more beautiful visually. So, The Drops of God has caused quite a stir, I should say, in the wine industry, because the wines that are mentioned in these 44 books or graphic novels are selling out really quickly. But let me give you some more background on this. Okay, I'm just zipping over to the Facebook comments. Gary says, I'm on a low-carb diet, so I'm saving my tasting for later with you. Oh, nice. Oh, so Gary, Elaine, Annie, they're all my students who have taken one of 2 courses with me. Get Wine Smart, which is now called the Wine Smart course, which I'm relaunching this weekend. I am so excited. I'm going to have a brand new free online video class for you for that course, the 5 wine and food pairing mistakes that can ruin your dinner and how to fix them forever. And that will teach you those, how to avoid those, but also how to create beautiful wine and food pairings. And then at the end, I will give you details on how to purchase the full wine course with me, which I hope you'll join me in doing that. The second course that I have launched, and some of them are, okay, you are back. I'm just looking at sound. Okay, cool. Let me know, guys, if there's no sound. Elaine says she's back. Okay, no sound on mine. So let me know as I switch to some of those slides, did you have any problem with hearing me? Please let me know in the comments so I don't go to slides and then you don't get any of my dialogue. The second course I have is Pairing Wine and Cheese with Style and Attitude. And I had a launch of that was just hugely fun and successful, and I'm going to relaunch that in the new year. So redo it. Of course, all my current students get all the updates because you have lifetime access, but that will be coming soon. Dave Head says, we picked up a few new releases of Spain and Portugal. El Goru Blend from Spain tonight. Feels like part of the glass is missing with the freezing. Elaine says she's back. Elaine, so I hope that's just a audio. Not me. Are you not hearing me? Guys, are you... Let me see. Are you not hearing me for the sound? Gary, when you say not me, I don't know if that means if you can hear me or not. So if you could just be explicit in the comments of whether you can hear me or not, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to take a little sip while I wait for your comment. Let me know if you can hear me now, but also when I switch to the slides. So hopefully, if I go to a slide, let me do an experiment. If I'm still talking, I can see my meter running, but maybe you guys can't. No problem with the sound. No issues with switching. I can hear you okay. Sound is solid. Yay. Okay, so I'm on a different slide set right now with vegetables. So hopefully you can hear it now. I'm still seeing the sound meter go up and down okay. So I hope that's working. Again, get right into the comments, guys. I think the sound, Elaine says, went out on my end for a minute. Gary says, no change when we switch to the slides. Great. Keep me in touch, guys, because that's the only way I know. I can hear myself talk. No problem on my end. Okay, good, Darren. Thank you. All right. So as I said, some of my students are here, and we are going to have a private tasting in our members area of some really amazing California wines after this Facebook session. But guys, if you're not in my group or haven't taken any of my courses, I'm opening it up again this coming weekend. You want to get in on that because it is so much fun. And I will leave my my students who are here to tell you about that. Peter is another student. Okay, so glad you guys are all here. All right, so let me go back to my notes on manga. So I find this really interesting. It's a social trend. It's a cultural thing. So I wanted to dig into it to find out what's going on, because it's really sending a little bit of a tremor through the wine world. So Drops of God, the authors are a brother and sister team. I'm going to probably not pronounce this correctly, but Shin and Yoko Kabashi, who wrote under the pseudonym Tadashi Agai, and then they worked with an illustrator, Shu Okimoto. They've published 44 books, which have been translated just recently into English through Amazon. And here's the core of the story, which I just love. Two half-brothers, both of whom want to inherit their father's $20 billion wine collection. Yeah, you heard that right. Their father's wine collection is worth $20 billion. And here's how they're going to inherit it. It's a competition. And the winner is determined by naming the 13 rare wines correctly that their father has laid out for them. So one brother is a sommelier, trained, and the other isn't, but he has a super, super keen sense of smell and taste, which he connects to emotions. So you've got the classic battle between the brain and the heart. All right, just connecting back, making sure you're still hearing me. All right, so it's really cool. They have 300 million readers in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. And now they're launching into North America, into the United States first. So these graphic novels teach people, the readers, a lot about wine, but in an entertaining way. It's very apparently gripping, and it's a page turner. And the difference between, by the way, manga and anime. Manga is the print version, so you can call them graphic novels or comic books. And then anime is either television or movies. They reflect the same thing with a visual aesthetic that's very similar, but that's why we have the two words for them. So in this case, Drops of Gods has a television show, and whatever wines they feature on that show, the wines really sell out quickly. And the two siblings first fell in love with wine at a tasting of, get this, Domaine Romani Conti. Way to start it off with a bang. I'm going to give you something different to look at now. I'm going to switch to some tomato dishes. Hopefully you are still hearing me. I'm going to type in the comments. Still hearing me? Question mark. Okay. Let me know. So cartoon, says Zhejiang. Well, yeah, I guess I call them graphic novels. I do believe they deserve that moniker versus comic books, and that's not to denigrate comic books, but I think there's a bit of a different art form and aesthetic involved here, Zhejiang. Again, apologies if I'm just massacring your name. Okay, so on with the wines, or the description of this. So they met at a they fell in love with wine at a Domaine de la Romani Conti tasting. I love some of their descriptions of wines. So they described a Pinot Noir from Burgundy, not Domaine DRC, but another one, as like chasing butterflies in a forest. Isn't that poetical and whimsical? So they've also launched an online wine club that features the wines that are in the books as well as the author's favorites. They host blind tasting games, and the winners, they're sort of like tournament-like blind tasting rounds, and the winners who guess the names correctly of the wines win rare bottles of Bordeaux and Burgundy, like the two sons, kind of following their narrative. They have a wine salon, which is an interactive wine club that they say is inspired by the salons of the Renaissance in 1930s Paris. And that's when people gathered for conversation and drinks and that sort of thing. Here's something neat. They have a palate quiz because they want people to have an inquisitive approach to wine rather than relying on what they call authoritative voices. That would be critics, by the way, wine writers, aka yours truly. They want to engage the right side of the brain, the creativity part. And so based on your answers to the palate quiz, they send you wines. So I find that's kind of intriguing. So you answer this palate quiz, and based on that, you get a different shipment of wine versus other people. Thank you so much, for Jim and Elaine, for confirming the sound is still working. Daryl Woods is here. Daryl, long time no see. What's in your glass? All right. So what's really cool is it's a subscription of $300 per 6 wines shipped quarterly. And the wines are based on 4 elements. Heaven, which represents the weather and climate. Earth, which refers to terroir, that fancy wine term for climate and soil. Man refers to winemaking and cellaring, and marriage is about wine and food pairing. So they're integrating these 4 elements into their wine choices that are reflective of the books themselves. So a concierge also helps you find wines that are not available in the club's lineup. There's pop-up tastings, a forum for members to share stories, and they had pretty frou-frou launch events. One was at Thomas Keller's Ad Hoc restaurant in Yountville. You know, he has Per Se. And another one in Beverly Hills at Bazaar. There's also live streaming events with tastings hosted by the authors themselves because they believe that wine is as much a story as it is a beverage. All right, so let me come back to you. So has anyone been intrigued by this? The Drops of God manga. First of all, does anyone follow manga or anime? It's quite a trend. It's not. It's for adults. It's not just because it's comics doesn't mean it's for kids, but it's having quite an effect with adults as well. I'd love to get involved, but right now it's in the United States, so only. But I'm sure they'll launch in Canada very soon. But I find all of these cultural trends, how people are trying to tie in the social connection of wine with its consumption and sales, very intriguing. So, anybody, any comments before we leave off on that topic? All right. So, again, if you are enjoying this conversation, please take a moment to let your friends and followers know about this. Perhaps they might want to catch the replay. If indeed you're watching the replay, please still comment because I will respond. And even better, let your friends and family know why they might find this of interest. As always, you can join me in a free online video class on food and wine pairing at nataliemclean.com/class. And Gary says not regularly. Not. I always forget what you're answering because there's a time lapse, but Gary, does that mean you don't regularly read manga? Okay, cool. I'm going to go on to my second topic, which is blends of wine versus single varietal or grape, like a Malbec, a Cabernet, or a single vineyard estate. So, of course, a lot of people sort of fetishize the single vineyard, single grape, more micro. But what about blends? So I'm going to take a contrarian opinion and stance tonight that would argue that blends are where it's at. But I'd like to know what you think. Blends versus single grape or single vineyard. What are your favorites? What have you tried in the past that just knocked your socks off in either category? Okay, Gary, thank you about anime and manga. All right, so I'm going to give you something, again, more visually interesting to look at. And I'm going to go over to my notes. So, blends versus single vineyard. So, there is that traditional snobbery of that a single grape or vineyard is better than a blend. And I think that's because most of us started buying wine, at least in North America, according to the name of the grape. That's how we got to know wines. Because we didn't have that European heritage of growing up and knowing that a Bordeaux is a Cabernet blend or a Burgundy is always a Pinot Noir. We didn't learn it that way. So we learned to buy wine based on Cabernet when it was written on the label, or Chardonnay. These were brand names. These grapes were brand names to us. And so that the follow-out or the follow-up of that today is that single vineyards are very fashionable. They're sort of hip and artisanal, like micro brews in beer, micro brews. So the more specific, the more micro you can get, the better somehow, the more pure, the best expression of, a 5-centimeter plot. But I would argue, no, that's not the case. And let me tell you a few significant facts and stats that might change your mind as well. So blends can also come from one vineyard. Field blends. So the traditional method of planting vineyards, like I'm talking centuries ago, was not to plant only one grape. It was to plant a variety of grapes. And that's what they mean by field blends. So when they harvested it all, they weren't bringing in just Cabernet or Pinot, and we're talking about the most coveted vineyards. They were bringing in a real variety of grapes. And so if you value tradition, history, a lot of the most coveted vineyards are field blends of many grapes. But let's go even down a notch further. Even grapes themselves, one single grape, are often not just one type or variety. For example, there are 350 different clones of Pinot Noir. And they can be planted, like several, maybe not all 350, but several can be planted in one vineyard. So what do blends give you? I argue that they give you better balance and layers of flavor, better diversity of flavor, and even more complexity because you've got different components contributing to the overall sum of the parts, if you will. Like, it's not a direct analogy, but it's like cooking with many different spices or ingredients versus relying on one spice. Now, if we think about benchmark blends, we need to look no further than Champagne and Bordeaux. Both of those wines are blends, as you probably know. Champagne is a blend of not just the grapes, and the grapes being usually Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and sometimes Pinot Meunier, but they're often a blend of vintages in the non-vintage wines. The non-vintage champagnes are considered the house style and the hardest to produce because you want a consistent house style year after year, even in poor vintages. So mastering that blending in the cellar, is really pure artistry. All right, let me get over to your comments because some good ones are coming in here. Thank you. And if you're just logging in, please let us know. Where are you logging in from? What's in your glass? Welcome, welcome. We're talking about blends versus single grapes. I would love to know. Okay, let me go over to the comments here. Gary said, okay, Dave Head says, more blends for you than single grapes or single sites. Gary says, I think blends are a great way to maintain high quality of wine, and the proportions of component grapes will vary each year to maintain the standard. I first started saving and drinking Bordeaux wines in the mid-'80s. Smart man. It's almost like having a diversified financial portfolio. Do you want to put all your stocks in oil and gas? Probably not a good analogy right now. You want a diverse portfolio, and I think that works with blends. Elaine, I now understand why blends can be better, but I like to try single varietals or grapes because I want to imprint. I like that. I want to imprint. So to be able to pick out the flavors in the blends. Yeah. So you want to be able to taste just one spice. Here's cinnamon, here's nutmeg, here's Cabernet Franc. Now I know kind of what they taste like on their own. Now I can pick them out in a blend. I like that. Darren, both have merits in my opinion. I like trying single varietals, but blends are equally good. To me, blends are greater than the sum of the parts. I love how some wineries change their blends from year to year. You know who's famous for that, Darren, is Stratus. What is his name? JC, the winemaker, not Cola, JP. It's a French name, if someone can help me. But he varies. He can have up to like 17 different grapes in his red blend or even sometimes in his white blend. And he's picking which grape did better this year, like which stock did better this year. Was 2019 a better year for Chardonnay versus Gewürztraminer? And he'll blend them all. Peter Nielsen is here, another of my course students from Windsor, Ontario. I usually prefer, he says, a blend unless the single vineyard is just stellar. Even really good vineyards in excellent vintages can benefit from a little tweaking from a gifted winemaker. Just 2 to 5% of something else can make a difference. You know what? That is so astute, Peter, because the traditional Rhone reds or Syrah in the Rhone Valley, it's very traditional, even if it's mostly Syrah, to have 2 or 3% Viognier, a white grape in a red blend, to give that floral lift mid-palate. And it just, that little lick, you wouldn't think, what's 2 to 3% going to do? But it actually makes a big difference. It's really amazing. So great point, Peter. Elaine says, for the winemaker, blending gives them an option for the vintage, as weather could wreck one varietal. Yes, early ripening versus late. So yeah, exactly. If you have a short season, you're going to put more of the early ripeners, the early ripening grapes, into the blend than those that take longer. And conversely, if you have a great season. Darren says, I may need to try Stratus next year. You do, Darren. Gary says, Stratus started by making all blends. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to keep going back to my notes. Let's see what I've got for you to look at. Pool pictures. Who wants to see that when it's so cold? Let me try something else. Maybe some rosés, anyone? Okay, so on the blends, so just consider that even most grower, those single vineyard, single site champagnes are blends, even within those single sites. And of course, Bordeaux, Chateau Margaux, Chateau Lafite, Latour, they're all blends of up to 5 grapes, as we know. Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. No one would argue that those are second-rate wines. Even Penfolds Grange, the iconic flagship Australian wine, is a blend of regions. Yeah, it's like really diverse, multi-regional wine. But somehow I think we're kind of stuck on the premise that a single grape or a single vineyard of a single grape is more representative of terroir, that climate and soil. Perhaps it is, but I'm not sure that's the be-all, end-all, right? So, open for discussion, as is everything else. So, guys, my third and final topic tonight is wine scores. I switched this up a little bit. I am going to be talking next week about the topic I had scheduled, which is a full-bodied framework to taste, pair, and buy wine like a pro. But we'll take the deep dive actually in 2 weeks' time, because we go live every second week. But what I'd like to sort of wrap up with is wine scores. Has anybody been following some of the very high wine scores that have been coming out lately, at least in the LCBO? Maybe in a liquor store close to you as well. But we had, I think this past weekend was Submission, a California Cabernet, which sold out like within hours because the Toronto Star critic gave it, I think, 96 points. Now this is a wine that's less than $20. There's also been an Italian reviewer that is starting to come on the scene, at least in terms of being quoted in the LCBO, and he's giving out a lot of 98s. So I just want to share with you my review of Submission. First, I should probably tell you, I'm not going to reveal the name of my reader here, but I received this note from a reader. He says, Submission Cabernet Sauvignon was featured in yesterday's Vintages release. It was promoted in the Toronto Star with a score of 96. Let's see. The wine sold out yesterday on the first day of its release. I managed to get a couple bottles and tried it yesterday evening. It was absolutely terrible. I noticed that you didn't give it a very high rating, and let me share with you the rating I did give it. So, as I said, the Toronto Star gave it a 96. I gave it an 87, and this is my review. Very sweet chocolate, mocha, and coffee aromas on the nose and palate of this generously oak-aged wine, and that is a euphemism. Had a lot of oak. Supple and smooth. Finishes very sweet as well. Almost a dessert wine here with milk, chocolate, and whipped vanilla cream. Pair with chocolate dip biscotti. So, anyway, that's my review. I'm just wondering if any of you have been following any of the very high reviews lately. I would love to know. Anybody got any comments on wine reviews? I should probably take a deep dive into wine reviews in a future chat, because I think that might be very helpful. But this was just so newsy coming up lately. It's been on a lot of blogs and social media have been, and I'm just getting a lot of emails from my readers. Deb from Vancouver is here. Hello, Deb, my dear. So glad you can tune in near the end. Anyone who's just joining us now, you are kind of tuning in near the end, but that's okay. You can watch the replay from the beginning. Jim says, agree that a blend can be well crafted, whereas a single varietal can be more luck of the draw. Yeah, it's like betting on one stock when you come to, there's nothing wrong with it. You bet on Google, you bet on Facebook, that's a great play for one stock or one varietal. But if you bet on Uber, not so much. Darren says, I'll be very curious to how you come up with your system of scoring. Might be a fun topic. You bet, Darren. I would be happy to take the deep dive into how I score, because I changed over time. My goodness, we're at 7:42, and Darren and Gary and Elaine and Peter and Annie, I've got to get over to my private group and take care of you guys now, my students, in a private tasting. So I'm going to wrap this up. Guys, thank you. I love these live tastings. Keep posting comments even as we wrap up now. I'll dive into the comments later or throughout the week, and even if you're watching the replay. So yes, Darren, I will go into a deep dive on my scoring in the future. Thank you for all the hearts and emojis. Thank you so much. Dopamine hit. All right, guys, take care, and we will see you later. Peter, I take scores with a grain of salt. Ultimately, it's one person's opinion. James Suckling routinely gives scores about 5 points higher than Wine Spectator, some I have never heard of. I generally agree with Wine Spectator and Natalie, thank you, within a couple of points. Others I completely disagree with. Elaine, wine reviews are usually subjective for the points. I like to read and see if I agree with the tasting notes. Good strategies, Peter and Elaine. I will see you very soon over in the private group for students. Take care, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.